Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today for the Mental Health and Wellness Tech Research Briefing. We're going to give everyone just another minute or two to join and then we'll get started. Okay everyone, thanks for waiting. My name is Andrew from CB Insights and I'll be walking you through a few housekeeping items before turning it over to John for the presentation. First, don't worry about taking notes as we'll be sending both the slides and recording to you right after the webinar. Second, if you have any technical difficulties during the webinar, your best bet is to reach out to the Citrix help desk. You can also tweet at us or send an email to webinar@cbinsights.com and we'll do our best to help. But again, we'll send everything out afterwards, so don't worry too much. Okay, so as with all of our webinars, we'll be moving through a lot of data and insights and doing it pretty quickly. But we also want to make sure we're answering your questions and keeping this relevant. So throughout the webinar, feel free to ask us questions using the Questions tab within GoToWebinar or via Twitter using the hashtag CBIWellness. So now a little bit about CB Insights. We are a market intelligence platform backed by Pilot Growth Equity and the National Science Foundation. Through machine learning, we analyze startup financings, patents, partnerships, and news mentions to help our clients answer questions about major trends, competitor strategy, and potential disruptors. Here you can see a few of our happy customers. I'm also really excited to announce a new type of event here at CB Insights. CB Insights Councils brings together senior execs to discuss their biggest growth, strategic, and innovation challenges with their peers. Looking to connect with your peers on fostering a culture of innovation or to exchange strategies for when to build, buy, or partner? CB Insights will cover this and more through this new initiative. Membership is by invitation only, and council members must meet the following criteria. Must be SVPs, EVPs, presidents, or C-level executives at corporations with $1 billion in revenue or more, and must be the head of their respective business unit, group, or function. These are just a few of the companies who've already joined. To be considered for membership, please email community@cbinsights.com or visit events.cbinsights.com/councils. Deadline to apply for our first cohort is September 1st, 2017. Finally, a little bit on John. John is a tech industry analyst at CB Insights. His research focuses on therapeutics, digital health, medical devices, and the media. John previously attended medical school at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School and worked in the healthcare investment group at Ben Franklin Technology Partners. John is a graduate of Johns Hopkins University.
Thank you, Andrew. So today we're going to be talking about the mental health and wellness industry with a focus on how it's being impacted by tech startups. We're going to go through funding and investor trends, corporate participation and deal flow, and then spend some time highlighting how mobile platforms and mental health are impacting the sector. We're going to finish up with M&A and IPO activity, forward-looking trends, and a few final thoughts. Let's get started. Now, most people have a general understanding of what is meant by mental health, but it's important to note that mental health is not merely the absence of disease, but rather it means an individual can cope with the normal stresses of daily life, as well as can work productively and fruitfully. Now, when we talk about mental illness, what we're referring to is disorders affecting thinking, mood, and behavior. These may affect someone's ability to relate to others and function each day, and each person will have different experiences. So one person's depression or anxiety may not look exactly like another person's. A few of the most common mental disorders in the world today are split into two verticals: depression disorders and anxiety disorders. On depression, we see major depression, postpartum depression, seasonal affective disorder, psychotic depression, and many other forms. And this affects about 6.7% of US adults. In terms of anxiety disorders, we see things such as social anxiety, obsessive compulsive disorder, or PTSD, which we often see in combat veterans. And this affects about 18% of US adults. Now, if we take a look at all mental health conditions, not just depression and anxiety, we see that about 1 in 25 adults in America live with a serious mental illness every day of their lives. And it becomes even a higher statistic when we look at how many of those experience a mental illness at some point in life, that being 1 in 5. Now, because it is such a common condition, at least in America and throughout the world, billions are being spent on treatment. In the US alone, about $89 billion was spent treating mental health conditions in 2013. This is more than infectious diseases, pregnancy and childbirth, and dermatological conditions. But an important note is that despite the billions of dollars being spent on treatment, and despite it being such a pressing issue in healthcare today, many people are not being treated. In developed countries, about 35 to 50% of those with mental illnesses are not receiving proper treatment. And that statistic gets even higher when we look at developing countries, that being 76 to 85% of those are not receiving proper treatment. Now, part of the reason for the difficulty in treatment is the difficulty in terms of a patient making its way from the onset of symptoms all the way through proper management. So we're going to take a look at a small case study of depression in the United States. So with depression, about 24 million patients have symptoms at any given point in the US. These symptoms include things such as loss of control, decreased energy, loss of enjoyment. Of those 24 million with symptoms, only about a third will make it all the way through to seeking help from a mental health professional. So that leaves us now with about 8.4 million seeking help. And even fewer, sometimes less than half of that number, will actually receive proper therapy. Proper therapy usually takes the form of psychotherapy or medication, but is now getting a little more digital, as we're going to take a look later in the presentation. A few of the barriers to getting proper management include physical barriers, such as physically having to go to the pharmacy and traveling there, as well as waiting for your pills to kick in, which could sometimes take many weeks. Now, on top of that, since each treatment has variable effects on the individual, this often leads to a repetition of the cycle and even more people dropping off as the therapy doesn't work or takes too long to kick in, and then symptoms re-arise and the patient has to go through the entire process again. So in response to this, we're seeing a lot of tech startups now working to identify problems early, as well as aid in the treatment and prevention of mental health conditions. So just to summarize here, there's an increasing number of startups targeting each of these major problems in mental health. We're going to focus on 4: access to treatment, fragmented care, misdiagnoses, and preventative measures, and we're going to go through each of these later in the presentation. So now we're going to take a look at where money is flowing to companies that are operating in the space. The mental health and wellness industry has seen about $625 million spread across 234 deals since 2013. And mental health funding is on track for a record year in 2017. On an annual basis, we've seen funding increase every year since 2013, and at the current run rate, total funding to private mental health companies is actually on track to reach $237 million this year, over 74 deals. Deal flow is projected to come in a little bit lower than last year. Some of the largest rounds we've seen since 2013 include the $40 million Series B of Quartet Health, the $36.7 million Series B of Headspace, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, the $36.6 million Series D of Abiltu, and the $35 million Series A of Lyra Health. Now, on a quarterly basis, I apologize. Now we're going to take a look at VC activity in the mental health space. So VC represents a fair share of total deal flow each year. Last year alone, VC-backed deals were 47% of total deal flow, and in 2017, through August 24th, VC deals represented about 66% of the total deal flow. A few of the notable deals with VC participation include those to Lyra Health, Abil2, and Quartet Health. So now on a quarterly basis, mental health deals declined in Q2 of 2017. Deals and funding to mental health and wellness startups peaked initially in Q1 of 16, in which we saw $75 million go to 29 deals. The second quarter of this year dropped about 42%, but funding was actually up 112%, largely due to Headspace's $36.7 million Series B earlier this year. If we take a look at how mental health and deal flow is distributed by round, we see that seed and Series A rounds represent the large majority of global deal flow, taking about 65% in 2016 and 73% in 2017 through August. However, we are seeing later stage, mid to late stage deals starting to appear each year. Some recent mid-stage deals we've seen are the Series D of Abil2, the Series C of Happify, and the Series B of Headspace, which was backed by Spectrum Equity Partners. This is still a young and maturing sector, so it makes sense that a large majority of deals so far are in the seed and Series A rounds. If you take a look at where deals are spread geographically, the large majority, about 70% of mental health and wellness tech startups deals have gone through companies in the United States. The United Kingdom is in a distant second, followed by India, Spain, and Canada. So if we focus on a few of these areas outside of the United States and look at some of the largest, most well-funded startups in this space, for a moment we see there's SciAS we have in Spain. SciAS is offering VR software for mental health professionals and is initially focused on anxiety disorders and phobias through exposure therapy as well as relaxation exercises. Moving over to India, one of the most well-funded mental health tech startups is Touchkin. Touchkin has developed an AI chatbot that they call Wysa. This helps with depression, anxiety, as well as stress. And then in the United Kingdom, we have companies receiving funding such as Big Health. Big Health is a digital platform offering cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT. They're initially targeting sleep, which they've stated is a strong indicator of mental health. And finally, in Canada, one of the most well-funded mental health companies there is GreenSpace. This is a platform used to measure patient progress in therapy sessions. So now we're going to take a look at some of the most active investors in mental health. As a size of just how early the sector is, the large majority of the most active investors are actually tech accelerators. The most active being Y Combinator, with deals to companies such as 7 Cups of Tea, which offers online therapy and counseling, as well as a few others. Now, the only non-tech accelerator that make the top list is Great Oaks Venture Capital, which is based in New York City, and you may be familiar with their participation in deals to Allbirds. A few other tech accelerators that made the list are the Hacks Accelerator, Dreamit, Techstars, Launchpad Digital Health, and 500 Startups. So now we're going to switch gears for a moment and look at how corporates are active in the mental health and wellness tech space. So on an annual basis since 2013, deals with corporate participation have increased every year, up significantly since 2013. At the current run rate, deals are on track to reach a 5-year high in 2017 of 17 deals with corporate participation, which would be up 70% year over year. Recent deals with corporate participation include Abil2's $36 million Series D. This had participation from Aetna Ventures and Horizon, both health insurers. Then we have SciAS's seed round, which we just spoke about, which was backed by Aviva. This is a UK-based insurance company. And finally, we have Regroup Therapy's $6 million Series A, backed by OSF Ventures. This is a hospital system in Illinois and Michigan. On a quarterly basis, deals to mental health startups with corporate participation saw a huge upswing from 2015 through to the middle of 2016. The first quarter of 2017 saw a high of 7 deals, with backers including Investec Ventures, which backed SilverCloud, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota, which backed Learn to Live, and Leo Innovation Lab, which backed Talk Life and Pacifica Labs. Leo Innovation Lab is an arm of Leo Pharma, which is a biopharmaceutical company. Now, note that not all the corporates investing in the space are in the same vertical. So here we've divided out a few notable deals and separated them out by industry. So when we talk about health insurers, we have deals from Aetna and Blue Cross Blue Shield to Abilto. In biotech, we're seeing deals such as that of Amgen and Merck to Akili. This is the Germany-based Merck, by the way. In technology, we have deals from Google to Quartet Health, which backed their Series B in April of last year. And finally, we see hospital systems such as Cedars-Sinai, which in April last year backed Applied VR. This is another interesting trend here is that some of these corporates are not only investing in tech startups, but are actively partnering with them on their own initiatives. So here we're going to take a look at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center and Applied VR. So Applied VR is a virtual reality platform that offers patients drug-free alternatives for managing pain and anxiety associated with medical procedures. So the platform has demonstrated success in reducing pain for hospitalized patients by inducing a relaxed state of mind that they call immersive distraction. So essentially they're engaging the mind in a calm and relaxed atmosphere enough that it hijacks other senses and may reduce pain, in very much the same way that meditation could have similar effects. Applied VR had already received investments to the tune of $100,000 from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Techstars, and Presence Capital. Another hospital system that's very active in mental health recently is Sutter Health on the West Coast. John Boyd, who heads up the mental health services at Sutter Health, has been very vocal about his opinion on the archaic systems and especially archaic funding streams and models of care around the mental health sector. And in order to remedy that, Sutter Health has recently partnered with two technology startups, one being Quartet Health, which has received investment from Google, and another being Meru Health, which bills himself as digital therapeutics for depression. So Quartet Health is a platform that pairs primary care doctors with mental health providers, and this will be integrated into Sutter Health's medical record. This will allow physicians to make referrals directly through the system, making it a much more seamless process to receive mental health care. Now, Meru Health, on the other hand, is an online medical clinic for depression, and they're just now beginning an initial pilot with Sutter Health to combat physician burnout. Another notable corporate partnership is Abilto with Aetna. This has been going on for 6 years and has resulted in a number of published reports in the American Journal of Managed Care, showing a 31% decrease in hospitalizations over a 6-month period when hospitals are given access to mental health to Abilto's platform. Abilto has received funding from Aetna Ventures, as you would expect, as well as Blue Cross Blue Shield Venture Partners, Bain Capital Ventures recently, and it has raised $57.6 million. Now, another very interesting trend is that Google, in addition to investing in mental health care through its investment in Quartet Health, is actually starting initiatives on its own. Just last week, it announced the release of a new mobile platform, a new mobile capability. When one searches for clinical depression, for instance, on your phone, not on your laptop, you'll see not only a definition and symptoms and treatments of what clinical depression is, as you would always see, but now Google actually added a box where you can check if you're clinically depressed. They worked with the National Alliance on Mental Illness to develop an online survey. It's about 9 questions, and it'll take you through questions such as, over the last 2 weeks, how often have you been bothered by any of the following, such as little interest in pleasure in doing things, and then it's multiple choice. So you go through the questions, and at the end, you receive a score. So say your score is 26. This would indicate severe clinical depression. It then tells you what that means and how to seek help properly. And important note on this is that this is initially mobile first. So Google sees the opportunity in the mobile economy to reshape the mental health sector. And with that in mind, now we're going to spend some time diving into mobile platforms and what startups are doing in this space. So mobile health in healthcare in general, not just mental health, is obviously is obviously a huge trend right now. We're seeing startups targeting everything from diabetes management to medication management to appointment scheduling, respiratory care, pharmacy delivery, cardiac care, pediatric care, and the list goes on and on. But now we're going to focus specifically on mental health, and we're going to look at these 4 challenges. 1, access to treatment. 2, fragmented care. 3, misdiagnoses. And 4, preventative measures. The way we're going to go about this is by looking at the current approach of each of these opportunities in mental health, and then look at the mobile-centric approach. We're going to start with access to treatment. So currently, in order to access mental health care, it's very location dependent. So that one patient in New York City, for instance, will have greatly increased access to mental health care compared to someone in rural America. Further, the current approach requires a physical location, meaning it's a pull approach to care as opposed to push. And what I mean by that is that in order for a patient to receive care, it requires them to make the appointment and go see the doctor on their own. This is as opposed to push, which we're seeing now with some mobile platforms in which the doctor is sent to the patient, or schedules are made for the patient, or reminders are sent to the user automatically. Mobile-centric approach is enabling a decentralized care model in which it doesn't matter where the patient is located in the world. This will reduce time, cost, and the friction of accessing mental health care. Just as an example of why this is such a big problem, the United States currently is meeting only 44% of its need for mental health practitioners. If we take a look at a few states here, we see numbers indicating the per state number needed to remove that shortage. In New Hampshire, which is doing incredibly well, that number is 0. But then in states such as Arizona or Mississippi, that number is 241 and 59 respectively. One startup that's working in this space is Talkspace. Talkspace is focused on 24/7 access and is direct to consumer. So the Talkspace app prioritizes its ability to connect a user to a therapist at any moment through text or through video. These come at different price points, ranging from $32 a week to $99 a week for video, and it also offers couples therapy. Talkspace has raised $28 million and is backed by SoftBank Capital, Spark Capital, Compound Ventures, and Norris Venture Partners. Now, when we look at how Talkspace is positioned in the App Store, some interesting trends pop up. We're going to take a look at a few keywords that are associated with the app. So given a keyword search on the Apple App Store for therapist, Talkspace app appears first on a list of over 2,000 results. That means Talkspace has been very successful in carving out a niche for itself, in that when someone is looking on their phone for a therapist, assumingly a therapist they can access over their mobile phone, Talkspace is the very first option that's presented to them. In a search for counseling even, the app appears second in about 370 results. Now, another interesting tidbit here is that you see 7 Cups of Tea appear on this list. Now, 7 Cups of Tea is that online therapy and counseling platform that we spoke about a little bit earlier. And this app is in direct competition with Talkspace, so it's no surprise that when someone searches for 7 Cups of Tea, Talkspace comes up as well. Another startup in this space is Ginger.io. Ginger.io is fairly similar to Talkspace in that it offers both unlimited chat via texting with a therapist, as well as video access. Their prices range from $129 per month to about $350, depending on what you're given access to. It starts at just text messaging and then goes through video access with a therapist, and then video access with a licensed psychiatrist. Ginger.io was last valued at $50.4 million and has raised from True Ventures, Coastal Ventures, Techstars, Kaiser Permanente, among many others. Ginger.io has actually launched several trials and pilots with over 25 institutions and academic partners across the country. If we take a look at Ginger.io's position in the App Store now, a few interesting trends also stand out. For one, life coaching, mental coaching, health coaching, these are all highly correlated with the Ginger.io app. The reason being, the app markets itself as a coaching and therapy platform. This is as opposed to Talkspace, which was more correlated with counseling and therapy. So moving on, the second opportunity we're going to take a look at is fragmented care. So currently, fragmented care means a patient, a doctor is only able to see certain snapshots of a patient's mental health status at periodic check-ins. So whether that patient is going to the doctor every few weeks or every few months, the doctor is really only able to get a snapshot view of that patient's mental health at that moment. Now, the patient may be able to relay to the doctor what has been going on over the past few weeks or months, but this is highly subject to the person's memory and normal human forgetfulness. This is also prone to delays and reversals of progress being made. Now, what the mobile-centric approach is, and where this area is going, is that we're going to enable continuous communication with the patient. This will allow for immediate action on behalf of the doctor. Further, we're going to be able to track the evolution of mental states over time. So instead of just checking in with the patient every few weeks or months, we're going to be able to track exactly what's going on in between those appointment visits. One notable company in this space is Regroup Therapy. So Regroup Therapy is a telepsychiatry platform that integrates into the EHR. This allows for the seamless provision of mental health care to clinics that would otherwise lack such care. So Regroup has raised about $8 million from Further Funds, Hyde Park Angels, and Impact Engine, among a few others. Now, the important part about Regroup Therapy is that it integrates with the EHR. Further, it's mobile enabled and basically allows for virtual staffing of a clinic. So when a patient goes to the doctor and goes to the mental health professional, and say there's only 2 in the clinic, that patient can only go there once every, say, 2 months, and the doctor is able to get a view of that patient at the moment. So with companies such as Regroup Therapy, which allow a clinic to expand its practice infinitely with the touch of a button, this allows the practice to greatly expand and be in contact with that patient at multiple times in between appointments. So third, we're going to talk about the problem of missed diagnoses. So currently, this is due to about two main points. One, the constantly evolving diagnosis framework, which is highly dependent on the physician's initiative to study and be up to date as possible on the most recent definition of depression or anxiety or bipolar depression, for instance. Further, it's highly dependent on the patient's ability to reveal private information. So, as you might expect, a lot of patients are not that willing to talk to a doctor face-to-face and reveal very private information that may lead to a positive diagnosis. Now, the mobile-centric approach is that these companies are now enabling private, tech-enabled diagnosis via mobile apps or platforms, or even things such as chatbots, which we're going to talk about. So they're effectively removing the physical barriers to diagnosis, that being travel or the barrier of revealing private information to a physician. These startups are now highly mobile enabled and allow the patient to communicate with the doctor from the comfort of their own home or over a text messaging platform. Now, one of the major reasons for misdiagnosis, as I mentioned, is evolving definitions. So here we're taking a look at the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This is basically the Bible for mental health. It defines every mental health condition and is required reading for any mental health professional. It has gone through multiple iterations since its first edition in 1952, most recently in 2013, and has gotten progressively longer each time and requires much more work on behalf of the doctor to remain as up-to-date as possible on the most recent definitions. One company that's working in this space is Abil2, as we mentioned previously. So Abil2 works with self-insured employers, it means it's B2B, and health plans to identify those in need. So the platform basically uses questionnaires to assess the level of need of each individual patient, of each individual employee, and then proceed to determine whether a mental health professional may be necessary. So if the questionnaire reveals that there may be an underlying mental health issue, the employee is then put in contact with a representative from the company. So this does two things. One, it solves the problem of the patient not actively seeking help for early stage symptoms and consequently having their diagnosis missed for long periods of time. And 2, it pushes care to the patient. Again, so instead of waiting for symptoms to flare up before seeking help, the user is automatically paired with someone from the company who automatically reaches out. The company was raised about $57 million from Bain Capital Ventures, Sandbox Industries, Aetna Ventures, Blue Cross Blue Shield, among other investors. The last opportunity we're going to take a look at is preventative measures. So the current approach to preventative mental health care is very limited. Not much is done prior to the onset of symptoms. Further, disorders which could have otherwise been caught or prevented early end up going untreated. What mobile platforms in this space are now allowing us to do is maintain a continual process of maintaining a healthy state, as well as enable the early identification of treatment. Now, one way platforms are doing this is by allowing for patients to have access to meditation therapy. These are users and people who may otherwise not dive into wellness platforms such as these, but are now allowed easy access at a low price point. So when we talk about meditation therapy, it's important to note that it has shown positive effects on anxiety and depression. The National Institutes of Health cites 2 systematic and meta-analyses that were done, one in 2014, one in 2012. In 2012, a review of 36 trials reported better outcomes for anxiety and meditation groups versus control. And in 2014, a review of 47 trials suggested that mindfulness meditation programs show moderate evidence of improving anxiety and depression. So one startup in this space that you may have heard of and is getting a fair amount of attention is Headspace. So Headspace is designed for short-form meditation therapy, and they prioritize personalization by allowing the user to choose their own program. Headspace also encourages social engagement by allowing the user to connect and track the progress of buddies or friends or coworkers that they want to engage with on the platform. This promotes focus, reduces stress, and the app also teaches you how to meditate on your own. If we take a look at the reviews of Headspace, they're overwhelmingly positive. The Headspace app was first launched in 2012, and the current version, version 3.1, was released in August 14 of 2017. A few of these reviews here are quite revealing. Back in September of 2016, we saw reviews such as the monthly fee is insanely high. Their fees right now range from $12.99 a month to $94.99 per year. They also offer a forever subscription for about $400 per year. Other reviews reveal that they love the motivation and gamification of the app, which may be an early indication of kind of where mental health care is going. Gamification we're obviously seeing in a lot of other areas of digital health. Now, if we take a look at the Headspace position in the App Store, relevant to as it pertains to certain keyword searches, Headspace has clearly carved out a large area for itself in the meditation space. Given a keyword search for daily meditation, for instance, the app appears first out of over 1,900 results. If we just search for meditate, the app appears first out of over 1,962 results. The app is in competition with Simple Habit, which is another meditation app, so it makes sense that you'll see Simple Habit here. Search for Simple Habit reveal Headspace as the second option. So to finish up, we're going to take a look at M&A and IPO activity. So exits in the space have been very limited. 2015 saw a high of 7 M&A deals, while 2017 thus far has seen just one, that of Care Management Technologies, which is a data analytics platform for mental and behavioral health care. A few recent exits other than Care Management include the IPO in 2016 of eHave. eHave is another health informatics platform. This is basically one of the only IPOs we've seen in the space in the past few years. And because of that, let's take a closer look at eHave. So eHave is based in Toronto. It's a developer of mental health bioinformatics platforms offering patient intake, patient communication, assessment, treatment, outcome verification tools, among many others. They have notable partnerships with the Hospital for Sick Children, as well as Acreus Pharmaceuticals and MedRelief, and they IPO'd in November of 2016. The Hospital for Sick Children and eHave are working on a platform for ADHD management with MedRelief. MedRelief is a medical cannabis producer, and along with eHave, they're developing a platform that will validate medical marijuana's potential for treating mental health conditions, and they're beginning with a clinical trial on PTSD. And most recently announced just this week, eHave is partnering with Acreus Pharmaceuticals and is going to be leading their bioinformatics component of their portfolio in both pharmaceuticals and cannabis products. So lastly, to finish up here, we're going to take a look at a few very early stage trends with the potential to affect lasting change in the mental health sector. And we're going to begin with preventative medicine. So this is not new for many other conditions. Preventative medicine for chronic diseases, for instance, is very well defined, but mental health is particularly lagging. So we expect to see mental health platforms proliferate, such as those we spoke about, enabling daily check-ins, suggestions, which may help prevent the onset of mental disorders. The second trend to watch is automated diagnosis. And so instead of physicians mentally running through a diagnostic criteria as they speak to every patient, we're going to be seeing more advanced algorithms running on top of things such as questionnaires, which could then suggest likely diagnoses and treatment plans to the physician. And third, a very interesting trend that we expect to see is human/AI blending. What that means is chat platforms are enabling 24/7 access to mental health professionals, and they're in the very early stages of using artificial intelligence on top of that. So as AI advances, we expect these chatbots to eventually be interchangeable with a human provider as they get better. An interesting note here is that on top of this is the trend of regulation. So we're seeing AI chatbots such as Touchskin, Wysa, as well as Wobot. And the regulation around these is not clear because, for instance, say a patient admits suicidal ideations or spousal abuse on one of these platforms, currently the AI chatbot will then redirect the patient to a human provider or recommend that they contact 911 or the suicide hotline. This is also the case with chat platforms such as Talkspace, in which the person is actually talking to a real therapist. So it's up to the therapist in that case, in many cases, in which case the patient is anonymous, to then reach directly out to the patient and ask for their emergency contact information. So there's a lot of debate here around who should be ultimately responsible for when patients admit things such as suicide. If they're in a therapist's office, currently if a patient admits suicide, it's up to the therapist to then report that. But in cases where it's anonymous on both sides, it becomes very murky and very difficult to decide where to go with these chat platforms. So this is going to be an interesting thing to watch in the years going forward. And lastly is a trend of proactive care. So instead of the initiative being placed on the patient, mobile platforms are now pushing care to the patient in the form of text messages, scheduled meetings, reminders. This greatly reduces the friction of mental health care in the world and will allow patients who may otherwise never seek treatment to now have access. So with that said, thank you very much for listening, and we'll now be taking questions. I have a few coming in already. I'm just gonna pick through a few of these. So one is, where do we see regulation around chatbots moving? Very interesting. Just late last year, we actually saw a pretty public debate around Talkspace. So Talkspace right now, when a person admits, say, suicidal ideations to a therapist on the platform, since it is anonymous, that therapist is then required, it's then up to that therapist alone to ask for that patient's information and then contact the appropriate authorities. So this is very subject to the therapist at hand, and Talkspace bills itself as a platform. But not just Talkspace, there's a lot of platforms that are similar to that. that are kind of going through similar regulatory challenges, such as things like Facebook or Google, well, not Google, but Facebook or LinkedIn or such, that bill themselves as platforms, and in some cases argue that they're not responsible for the actions of its users. So I'm not aware of any court cases currently, so it's fairly unclear and a little murky right now. So it's going to be exciting to see, especially where AI chatbots such as Wobot, TheraChat, and X2AI go in the coming years. So another question we have here is, why has it taken so long for technology to enter the space? Good question. One of the reasons for this that we mentioned very early on is that one person's depression does not look like the next. So what I mean by that is that it's very hard to make a diagnosis and even harder to treat mental health care. When you look at conditions such as diabetes, which is almost overwhelmed with technology nowadays, from glucose monitors to anything else, one person's diabetes, whether it be type 1 or type 2, basically looks exactly like the next person's. It has the same cause and the treatment is usually the same. But mental health care varies extremely from person to person. A person can go through many, many cycles of treatment and never find the right one for them. Perhaps it hasn't even been developed yet. And then other patients could have the same problem, say bipolar disorder for instance, and receive their first line of medication and then be fine for the rest of their lives. So technology has to kind of manage that and allow for the incredible personalization that mental health care requires, and that has been a very difficult task to date. But chat platforms and telemedicine is a step in the right direction in allowing patients to have immediate access to therapists. Third, last question we're going to take here is, so apps seem very expensive. Do they really save money? Good question. So on average, the average therapist will cost you about $75 to $100 per treatment or per office visit. In contrast to that, some of these apps, especially Talkspace or Headspace or any of these, cost about $100 to $200 per month. Now, depending on the number of visits the average person will take with a therapist, these platforms are clearly saving money in that an entire month of using the platform costs the same as about one visit to a real therapist. So they are saving real money and are making a real impact on patients' access to proper mental health care. So thank you all for listening. If you do have other questions, feel free to email me. We'll see you next time. Thank you.